The red sun of Vorthok Prime cast long shadows across the crystal mountains as Taman spread his massive wings. Each wing was longer than 3 starships placed end to end. His dark blue scales caught the dying light as he prepared for the most important journey of his very long life. In his front claws, wrapped carefully in the softest silk from the moon spiders of Kepler-7, lay his son. Little Minho was no bigger than the ancient earth creatures called house cats, but even at this tiny size, Minho should have been strong and bright. Instead, his golden scales had turned a sickly gray color. His small chest barely moved as he breathed. Scale rot had taken hold of the hatchling 3 weeks ago. Taman had lived for over 800 years. He had seen empires rise and fall across the galaxy. He had watched stars being born and dying in brilliant explosions. But nothing in all those centuries had prepared him for the fear he felt now as he looked down at his sick child. The disease had started small. Just one scale near Minho's left wing had lost its shine. Taman had rushed his son to the best healers on Vorthok Prime. The dragon doctors had examined Minho with their advanced crystal scanners and energy readers. They shook their wise old heads and spoke in worried whispers. "Scale rot," they had said. "We are sorry, Ancient One, there is no cure." But Taman refused to accept this answer. He flew to the medical centers on New Dracos, the dragon capital world. The healers there were even more advanced. They used machines that could see inside a dragon's body down to the smallest parts. They tried treatments that had been developed over thousands of years. Nothing worked. The gray color spread to more of Minho's scales each day. Next, Taman had taken his son to the healing worlds of the Andrex Union. The bird-like Andrex were famous throughout the galaxy for their medical knowledge. Their doctors had long, thin beaks perfect for precise surgery. Their 4 arms could operate multiple healing devices at once. The head Andrex healer, a being with silver feathers and kind eyes, had examined Minho for hours. Finally, she had looked up at Taman with sadness in her voice. "Great dragon, we have tried everything we know. Scale rot attacks the very foundation of dragon life energy. It is like trying to heal a broken star. We do not have the power." From the Andrex worlds, Taman had flown to the crystal cities of Zephyr Prime. The crystalline beings there could reshape matter with their thoughts. Surely they could fix whatever was wrong with his son's scales. But even the crystal masters had failed. Their leader, a being made of pure blue crystal, had spoken to Taman through vibrations in the air. "Ancient dragon, your hatchling's condition goes beyond the physical world. Scale rot touches the quantum strings that hold dragon essence together. We can reshape matter, but we cannot reweave the fundamental patterns of life." Weeks passed. Minho grew weaker. He stopped trying to fly. He barely ate the special foods that dragon hatchlings loved. His small voice, once full of curiosity and joy, became just a whisper. Taman felt his own life force dimming as he watched his son fade away. Dragons were creatures of strong emotion. When their hearts broke, their power left them. Some dragons had died simply from grief when they lost their children, but Taman was not ready to give up. On the 42nd day since Minho first became sick, Taman sat in his crystal cave on Vorthok Prime. He held his son close to his massive chest, feeling the weak beating of the small heart. Outside, the red sun was setting behind the crystal peaks. That was when he heard the whisper. It came on the solar wind, carried by cosmic dust from distant stars. Dragons had always been able to hear these whispers if they listened carefully. Most dragons ignored them as meaningless noise from space, but desperate fathers listened to anything that might offer hope. The whisper spoke of a small blue and green world near the outer edge of the galaxy. A world called Earth. On this world lived a young species that most of the galaxy barely noticed. They were called humans. The whisper told of strange healers among these humans. Healers who could cure diseases that had puzzled advanced civilizations for centuries. Healers who used methods so simple that sophisticated beings laughed at them. Yet somehow these primitive techniques worked where advanced science had failed. Taman almost dismissed the whisper as his imagination. How could a species that had not even left their home star system teach anything to the great medical civilizations of the galaxy? Humans were barely out of their caves compared to dragons. But as he looked down at Minho's fading scales, Taman realized he had no choice left. Every advanced healer in the galaxy had failed. Maybe it was time to try something that was not advanced at all. He carefully placed Minho in a special travel pod designed for sick hatchlings. The pod would keep his son warm and provide clean air during the long journey. Taman programmed his navigation system for the coordinates the Whisper had given him. A small star called Sol, third planet from the sun. As he lifted off from Vorthak Prime, other dragons saw him leaving. Many shook their heads in disapproval. The Dragon Council had already told him to accept Minho's fate with dignity. Flying to a primitive world to seek help from barely evolved creatures was not the dragon way. "Where do you go, Taman?" called out Yongsu, an elder dragon with red scales. "To find hope," Taman replied without stopping. The journey to Earth would take him through hyperspace lanes he had never traveled. He would have to cross territories controlled by species who might not welcome a dragon. Some areas of space were dangerous even for beings as powerful as dragons, but none of that mattered. Minho needed help, and Earth was his last chance. As Taman entered hyperspace, the stars stretched into lines of light around him. He thought about the Whisper and wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his long life. What if these humans could not help? What if they were afraid of dragons and refused to try? What if he was too late and Minho died during the journey? He pushed these dark thoughts away. A father's love was stronger than doubt. If there was even the smallest chance that someone on Earth could save his son, then that chance was worth any risk. Behind him, Vorthak Prime disappeared into the darkness. Ahead lay the unknown. But for the first time in weeks, Taman felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt hope. Dr. Jiwan Park was cleaning the kennels in her small animal clinic when the sky turned black at noon. She looked up from washing the metal cages where she kept injured birds and sick farm animals. Through the window of her clinic, she could see that something huge was blocking the sun over her village, in rural Korea. The shadow was moving across the rice fields like a giant cloud, but clouds did not roar. The sound that came from above was unlike anything Jiwon had ever heard. It was deeper than thunder and louder than jet planes. The windows of her clinic shook. The animals in their cages began to cry out in fear. Her assistant Hyunwoo dropped the bag of dog food he was carrying. "What is that sound?" Hyunwoo asked, his face pale with worry. Jiwon ran outside to see what was happening. Above her village, something impossible filled the sky. It was a creature from legends and old stories, a dragon. But this dragon was real, and it was bigger than any building she had ever seen. The dragon's wings were spread wide as it flew in circles above the rice fields. Its scales were dark blue and caught the sunlight like pieces of metal. Smoke came from its nostrils with each breath. When it opened its mouth, Jiwon could see teeth longer than her entire body. Other people from the village had come outside too. Mrs. Yoonji from the grocery store stood in her doorway with her mouth open. Old Mr. Taehyun, who had lived through wars and famines, was shaking as he pointed at the sky. Children were crying. Dogs were barking. Everyone was asking the same question. What is that thing? The dragon circled lower and lower. Jiwon could see that it was carrying something small in its front claws. The creature looked tired. Its powerful wing beats were becoming slower and more difficult. Then the dragon began to fall. It crashed into the rice field behind Jiwon's clinic with a sound like an earthquake. The ground shook so hard that she fell down. Mud and rice plants flew everywhere. When the dust settled, there was a dragon-shaped crater in what used to be Mr. Dongyun's best rice field. The dragon was not moving. People screamed and ran away from the crater. But Jiwon found herself walking toward it instead. As a veterinarian, she had spent her life helping hurt animals. Something deep inside her said that this giant creature, no matter how scary it looked, was in trouble. She could hear sirens in the distance. The military would be here soon. News helicopters were already flying toward the village. The whole world would know about this in minutes, but right now there was just Jiwon and a dragon that might be dying. As she got closer to the crater, the dragon's head moved. One huge eye, golden like the sun, looked at her. The dragon tried to lift its head but was too weak. In its claws, Jiwon could see what it had been carrying, a baby dragon. It was tiny compared to its parent, no bigger than a house cat, and it was clearly very sick. The adult dragon made a sound that was not a roar. It was softer, sadder. It sounded almost like crying. The dragon was trying to show her the baby in its claws. "Hyunwoo," Jiwon called to her assistant, who was still standing by the clinic door. "Bring my medical bag." "The big one. Are you crazy?" Hyunwoo shouted back. "That thing could eat you." But Jiwon was already climbing down into the crater. The dragon watched her every move with those golden eyes. She expected it to be angry or dangerous. Instead, she saw something she recognized from years of treating animals. She saw a parent asking for help. The dragon moved very slowly and carefully. It lowered its great head until it was resting on the ground near Jiwon's feet. Then it opened its claws to show her the baby dragon inside. The little creature was barely breathing. Its scales, which should have been bright gold, were turning gray. Jiwon had never seen a dragon before, but she could tell that this baby was dying. Behind her, she could hear more sirens. Military trucks were arriving in the village. Helicopters filled the sky. News crews from Seoul were probably already on the way. Soon this place would be surrounded by soldiers and scientists and reporters. But none of that mattered right now. "It's okay," Jiwon said softly to the adult dragon. She did not know if it could understand her, but her voice was gentle like she used with all frightened animals. "I want to help." The dragon made that sad crying sound again. Then it did something that surprised everyone who saw it. The mighty creature that could have destroyed the entire village with one breath lowered its head even more until it was touching the ground near Jiwon's feet. It was bowing too. Her military vehicle surrounded the crater within minutes. Soldiers with big guns pointed them at the dragon. An officer with many medals on his uniform shouted at Jiwon through a loudspeaker. "Step away from the alien creature immediately. This is a matter of national security." But Jiwon did not move. She looked up at the soldiers surrounding the crater and then back at the dying baby dragon in its father's claws. "This creature came here for help," she called back. "Look at it. It's not attacking anyone. It's asking for medical care." The officer spoke into his radio. More helicopters arrived. Scientists in white coats were setting up equipment around the crater. Government officials in expensive suits were arriving in black cars. The adult dragon ignored all of them. Its eyes never left Jiwon's face. It was waiting to see what she would do. Jiwon thought about her oath as a veterinarian. She had promised to help all animals that suffered regardless of their species. She had never imagined that promise would include creatures from outer space, but a promise was a promise. She also thought about what would happen if she walked away. The military would take the dragons somewhere for study. Scientists would run tests on them. The baby would probably die while people argued about what to do. Or she could try to help. "I need to examine the baby," Jiwon said to the dragon, speaking slowly and clearly. "Will you let me?" The dragon looked at her for a long moment. Then it very gently used one massive claw to push the baby dragon closer to her. Around the crater, soldiers were shouting. Officers were giving orders. Scientists were arguing about procedures. News reporters were trying to get closer for better pictures. But in the center of it all, a small human woman knelt beside an alien creature the size of a mountain. And for the first time in days, the ancient dragon felt something it had almost forgotten. It felt hope that someone might be able to save its child, even if that someone was just a simple animal doctor from a small village in Korea. Jiwon had never examined a patient like this before. The baby dragon lay on the metal table in her clinic, looking impossibly small after she had carried him away from his giant father. The military had wanted to take both dragons to a government facility, but the adult dragon had refused to let anyone else touch his child. He would only allow Jiwon near the baby, so they had moved her entire clinic setup to a large tent beside the crater. Soldiers stood guard everywhere. Scientists with expensive equipment watched her every move. News cameras recorded everything from behind metal barriers, but Jiwon tried to ignore all of them. Right now, she had a patient who needed her help. The baby dragon was barely alive. His breathing was so shallow that she had to put her ear close to his tiny chest to hear it. His scales, which should have been bright and shiny, looked dull and gray like old metal. Some scales around his neck had turned completely black. "What do you think, doctor?" asked Dr. Sunho, the government scientist who had arrived from Seoul. He wore thick glasses and carried a tablet computer that was always beeping with new information. "I have never seen anything like this," Jiwon said honestly. She was using her regular veterinary tools to examine the baby dragon. Her thermometer, stethoscope, and small flashlight seemed very simple compared to the advanced scanning machines the scientists had brought, but her simple tools were telling her things that the fancy machines could not detect. "His body temperature is dropping," she said, checking the thermometer, "but it's not dropping evenly. Some parts of his body are cold while others are still warm. That should not be possible." She listened to his heart with her stethoscope. The heartbeat was strange. It seemed to skip beats, then speed up, then slow down again. It was like his heart could not decide what rhythm to follow. "Look at this," she said to Hyunwoo, who was helping her despite being terrified of dragons. She shined her small flashlight on the baby dragon's scales. Under the light, the healthy golden scales seemed to glow softly. But the gray and black scales absorbed the light completely. It was as if those scales had forgotten how to reflect light properly. "It's like the 6 scales are made of different material," Hyunwoo observed. Jiwon nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. She carefully took a small sample of one of the black scales that had already fallen off. Under her microscope, what she saw made no sense. The scale looked normal on the surface. But deeper inside, the structure was breaking apart. The tiny building blocks that made up the scale were coming undone, like a sweater unraveling thread by thread. "Dr. Park," said Dr. Sunho, looking at his tablet. "Our quantum scanners show something very unusual. This disease is not just affecting the dragon's body. It's affecting the basic patterns that hold his cells together." Jiwon looked up from her microscope. "What do you mean?" "Every living thing is held together by invisible forces at the smallest level," Dr. Sunho explained. "These forces are like tiny strings that connect everything. The disease is cutting these strings." This was beyond anything Jiwon had studied in veterinary school. She dealt with broken bones, infections, and parasites. She had never heard of a disease that could attack the invisible strings that held life together. But as she looked at the dying baby dragon, she realized that understanding the science was not as important as finding a cure. "Have you tried antibiotics?" Dr. Sunho asked. "Yes," Jiwon replied. "I gave him a small dose of our strongest medicine for infections. But this does not look like any infection I know." She had also tried pain medicine, vitamins, and fluid injections. Nothing seemed to help. The baby dragon was still getting worse. Outside the tent, she could hear the adult dragon making worried sounds. Taemin had not moved from the crater since they brought his son inside. He watched the tent constantly with his huge golden eyes. "The father dragon is getting anxious," said Captain Seojin, the military officer in charge of the situation. "Our translators are trying to communicate with him, but he only responds to you, Doctor." Jiwon walked to the tent entrance. The adult dragon's massive head turned toward her immediately. His eyes asked the same question that any worried parent would ask. "Is my child going to be okay?" "I am trying everything I can," Jiwon said to him, knowing he probably could not understand her words, but hoping he could understand her tone. The dragon made a low rumbling sound. Then he did something unexpected. He began to speak. The sounds coming from his throat were not like human words, but they had a rhythm and pattern. Dr. Sunho's translation computer began working, turning the dragon sounds into human language. "He is telling us about the disease," Dr. Sunho said, reading from his computer screen. "He calls it scale rot. He says it has killed many dragons across the galaxy. No one has ever found a cure." Jiwon listened as the translation continued. Taemin was describing all the places he had taken his son for help. Advanced civilizations with medical technology that humans could not even imagine. Healers with knowledge built up over thousands of years. All of them had failed. Then why did he come to Earth? Jiwon asked. The dragon spoke again. The translation made Jiwon's heart beat faster. He heard whispers in space about human healers. Stories that humans can cure diseases that advanced civilizations cannot heal. He came here because we were his last hope. Jiwon felt the weight of that responsibility. An ancient creature had traveled across the galaxy because he believed that humans, with their simple medicine, might succeed where others had failed. But looking at the dying baby dragon, Jiwon was not sure that belief was correct. She went back to examining her patient. This time she tried something different. Instead of thinking about what the advanced alien healers would do, she thought about what her grandmother used to do. Her grandmother had been a traditional healer in the village before modern medicine arrived. She had treated sick animals with herbs, warm compresses, and gentle massage. Most importantly, she had always said that healing came from understanding what the patient needed, not just what the disease was doing. Jiwon looked at the baby dragon with fresh eyes. He was cold, weak, and scared. His body was fighting something that was destroying him from the inside out. What would her grandmother have done? "Hyunwoo," she said suddenly, "prepare a warm bath. Not hot, just warm. And bring me the honey from the supply closet." "Honey?" Dr. Sunho asked. "Doctor, this creature has a quantum cellular breakdown. Honey will not help that." "Maybe not," Jiwon said. but it might help him feel better while we figure out what will. As she prepared the simple treatment, she noticed something. The baby dragon's breathing became a little easier when she spoke to him gently. His heart rate became more steady when she touched his scales softly. Maybe the advanced civilizations had been so focused on fighting the disease that they had forgotten to care for the patient. Maybe that was what made human healing different. Outside, news reports were being broadcast around the world about the alien dragons and the human doctor trying to save a life. But inside the tent, Ji-won was just doing what she had always done. She was taking care of a sick baby who needed help. The warm honey bath was not what anyone expected to save an alien's life. Ji-won carefully lowered the baby dragon into a small plastic tub filled with warm water and dissolved honey. The scientists from Seoul watched with confusion. The military officers looked at each other with doubt. The news reporters outside were calling her methods primitive and unscientific, but something amazing happened. For the first time in 3 days, the baby dragon opened his eyes fully. The tiny golden orbs looked up at Ji-won with curiosity instead of pain. His breathing became deeper and more regular. The gray scales on his neck began to show tiny hints of their original golden color. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Sunho, staring at his computer readings. "His cellular activity is increasing. The quantum breakdown is slowing down." Outside the tent, Taemin heard his son make a small sound. It was not a cry of pain. It was the first healthy noise the baby dragon had made since getting sick. The adult dragon's massive head lifted with hope. But Ji-won was not finished. While the baby dragon soaked in the honey bath, she prepared other treatments that seemed just as simple. She mixed together several herbs that her grandmother had used for sick animals. Ginseng for energy, ginger for digestion, green tea leaves for their healing properties. To this mixture she added something that made Dr. Sunho shake his head in disbelief. She added her own saliva. "Dr. Park, what are you doing?" Dr. Sunho asked. "Human saliva contains bacteria that could harm the patient. It also contains healing enzymes," Ji-won replied calmly. "My grandmother taught me that sometimes the healer's own body knows what the patient needs." She had no scientific explanation for why this might work on an alien creature. But her grandmother had always said that healing was about more than just medicine. It was about the connection between the healer and the patient. Using a small dropper, Ji-won placed tiny amounts of the herb mixture on the baby dragon's tongue. She expected him to spit it out or refuse to swallow. Instead, the baby dragon's eyes brightened even more. He swallowed the mixture eagerly, as if his body recognized that this was exactly what he needed. "His temperature is stabilizing," reported Hyunwoo, checking the thermometer every few minutes. "The cold spots on his body are getting warmer." Dr. Sunho was frantically taking notes on his tablet. "The quantum readings are unlike anything we have seen. The breakdown is not just slowing down, it's starting to reverse." But the most important change was happening to the baby dragon's scales. The black ones were beginning to turn gray. The gray ones were showing streaks of gold. It was like watching a flower bloom in fast motion. Ji-won continued her unusual treatment through the night. Every few hours, she gave the baby dragon another honey bath. She fed him the herb mixture, but most importantly, she stayed beside him constantly, talking to him in gentle tones and stroking his tiny scales with careful fingers. "What are you saying to him?" asked Captain Seojin during one of his visits to check on the situation. "I am telling him that he is safe," Ji-won replied, "that his father loves him very much, that he is going to get better." "But he cannot understand human language," the captain pointed out. Ji-won looked up from the baby dragon, who was sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. "Animals understand more than we think. They feel the intention behind our words. Love and care sound the same in every language." By morning, the change in the baby dragon was obvious to everyone. His scales were more golden than gray. His breathing was strong and steady. When Ji-won offered him small pieces of fish, he ate eagerly instead of refusing food. But the real test came when she decided to try something that made everyone nervous. She took the baby dragon outside to see his father. Taemin had not slept all night. The ancient dragon had kept watch over the tent, listening to every sound from inside. When he saw Jiwan carrying his son toward the crater, his massive body trembled with emotion. Jiwan carefully placed the baby dragon on the ground near his father's enormous head. For a moment, everyone held their breath. Then the baby dragon did something wonderful. He spread his tiny wings and flew up to touch his father's nose with his own small snout. It was the dragon equivalent of a hug. Taman made a sound that was part roar and part song. It was the sound of pure joy. Tears, each one as large as a human hand, rolled down his massive cheeks and made small puddles in the dirt. The baby dragon chirped happily and flew in small circles around his father's head. His movements were playful and full of energy. This was not the same dying creature that had been brought to Earth just days before. Dr. Sunho approached Jiwan with his tablet full of readings and measurements. "Dr. Park, what you have accomplished should be impossible. Scale rot has never been cured by any civilization in the galaxy. How did you do it?" Jiwan watched the baby dragon playing with his father and thought about the question. How could she explain that she had not really followed any scientific method, that she had simply treated the baby dragon the same way she would treat any sick animal that came to her clinic? "I think," she said slowly, "that everyone else was trying to fight the disease, but I tried to help the patient." "What is the difference?" Dr. Sunho asked. "The disease was breaking down the connections that held his body together," Jiwan explained. "But instead of trying to rebuild those connections with machines or chemicals, I tried to rebuild them with care." She pointed to the baby dragon, who was now perched on his father's nose, chirping contentedly. Dragons are not just biological creatures. They are beings with emotions and family bonds. The baby dragon was not just sick in his body. He was sad and scared and separated from his father. The honey and herbs helped his body heal, but the love and attention helped his spirit heal. As if to prove her point, the adult dragon began to glow softly. It was a gentle golden light that came from deep within his scales. Jiwan had never seen anything like it. "He is expressing gratitude," Dr. Sunho said, reading from his translator. "In dragon culture, this glow is reserved for the most sacred moments." Taman lowered his massive head until it was resting on the ground in front of Jiwan. Then he spoke, and the translator turned his words into human language. "Small healer of Earth, you have given me back my son's life. The debt I owe you can never be repaid, but I swear by the ancient dragon oath that I will protect your world and your people for as long as I live." Jiwan reached out and gently touched the scales on Taman's nose. They were warm and smooth, like polished stone heated by the sun. "You do not owe me anything," she said simply. "This is what healers do." Around them, scientists were taking measurements and reporters were broadcasting the miracle to the world. But in that moment, there was only a grateful father, his healthy son, and the small human who had believed that love could heal what science could not cure. 3 weeks after the first honey bath, baby Minho was completely healthy. His golden scales shined like pieces of the sun. He flew in happy circles around the village, playing games with the human children who were no longer afraid of dragons. His laugh, a sound like silver bells ringing, filled the air whenever Jiwan came outside her clinic. The whole world was watching Korea now. Scientists from every country wanted to study what Jiwan had done. Medical schools were rewriting their textbooks to include her treatment methods. The simple honey baths and herb mixtures had become the most famous cure in human history. But the dragons were not the only aliens who had noticed what happened on Earth. On a Tuesday morning, Jiwan was feeding Minho small fish outside her clinic when the sky filled with ships. They were not like the military helicopters that had been coming and going for weeks. These ships were sleek and silver, shaped like teardrops made of metal. They moved without making any sound. 12 ships landed in the rice fields around the village. From each ship came beings that looked almost human, but not quite right. They were tall and thin, with skin that was too pale and eyes that were too large. They wore white robes that seemed to glow with their own light. "Who are they?" Hyunwoo asked nervously. Dr. Sunho checked his computer and looked worried. "According to our databases, they are from the Galactic Medical Consortium. They control most of the advanced medical knowledge in this part of the galaxy." The leader of the pale beings walked toward Jiwan's clinic. He moved in a way that seemed to float rather than step. When he spoke, his voice sounded like it was coming from inside everyone's head instead of from his mouth. I am Healer Prime Kento of the Galactic Medical Consortium, he said. We have come to take the human healer into custody. Captain Seojin and his soldiers immediately raised their weapons. This is Korean territory. You have no authority here. Kento looked at the human weapons with something that might have been amusement. Your primitive projectile devices cannot harm us. We are here on a mission of galactic importance. More soldiers arrived from the army base. Jets flew overhead. The Korean government was clearly not planning to let aliens take one of their citizens without a fight. But Kento ignored all of the military preparations. He walked directly to where Ji-won was standing with baby Minho perched on her shoulder. Dr. Ji-won Park, Kento said, his strange voice echoing in everyone's minds. You have accomplished something that violates the natural laws of medicine. Scale rot is incurable, yet you have cured it using methods that should not work. I used honey and herbs, Ji-won replied calmly. Anyone can do what I did. That is exactly the problem, Kento said. Your species possesses biological capabilities that are dangerous to galactic stability. You must come with us for study and containment. Behind Kento, other consortium members were setting up strange machines that hummed with energy. Dr. Sunho's equipment began giving off warning signals. They are scanning everything, Dr. Sunho whispered to Ji-won. These readings show they are analyzing your DNA, your brain patterns, even your emotional responses. Taemin, who had been resting peacefully in his crater, suddenly lifted his massive head. His golden eyes focused on the consortium ships with obvious anger. When he spoke, his voice was like controlled thunder. You dare threaten the healer who saved my son? Kento turned toward the ancient dragon without showing any fear. Great dragon Taemin, you have been deceived. This human did not heal your offspring through kindness. She possesses a biological weapon that can manipulate quantum cellular structures. Such power cannot be allowed to spread. You lie, Taemin growled, and flames began to flicker around his nostrils. Do we? Kento asked. Tell me, Ancient One. How can a species that has barely discovered space travel cure a disease that has defeated civilizations millions of years old? The only logical explanation is that humans are carriers of an unknown pathogen that mimics healing, while actually preparing biological systems for conquest. More consortium ships appeared in the sky. Ji-won counted at least 30 of them now. Each ship was larger than the ones that had landed first. Whatever the consortium was planning, they had brought enough force to fight an entire planet. Dr. Park, Captain Seojin said quietly, our government is prepared to defend you, but these aliens have technology we do not understand. The fight might destroy the village. Ji-won looked around at her home. Mrs. Yoonji was watching from her grocery store with fear in her eyes. The children who had been playing with Minho were hiding behind their parents. Old Mr. Taehyun was standing in front of his house with a farm tool in his hands, ready to defend his home even though he was just one old man against alien starships. These people would suffer because aliens were afraid of her ability to heal. I will go with them, Ji-won said. No, Taemin roared, and his voice shook the ground. I swore an oath to protect you and your people. I will not break that oath. The ancient dragon rose to his full height. Even the consortium members seemed impressed by his size and power. Taemin spread his wings, blocking out the sun like he had on the day he first arrived. Healer Prime, Taemin said, his voice now deadly calm. You speak of galactic law and medical science, but you know nothing of dragon law. This human healer is under my personal protection. Anyone who harms her will face my wrath. Other dragons began appearing in the sky. Ji-won had not known there were more of them on Earth, but now she could see at least 6 adult dragons flying toward the village. They must have been hiding in the mountains, waiting to see what would happen. You would start a war over one primitive healer? Kento asked. I would start a war to protect the being who gave me back my son's life, Taemin replied. And I would not be alone. Every dragon in the galaxy who has lost a hatchling to scale rot will stand with me when they learn that a cure exists. For the first time, Kento looked uncertain. The consortium was powerful, but they were not strong enough to fight every dragon in the galaxy. There is another solution, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Dr. Sunho stepping forward with his tablet computer. He had been working frantically while the aliens and dragons argued. Healer Prime Kento, Dr. Sunho said. You claim that Dr. Park's abilities are dangerous because they cannot be explained. But what if they could be explained and shared? What are you suggesting? Kento asked. Dr. Park is willing to teach her methods to healers from across the galaxy, Dr. Sunho said. Not as a prisoner or test subject, but as a teacher. Let her show others how human healing works. Then you will see that it is not a weapon, but a gift. Jiwon looked at Dr. Sunho with surprise. They had not discussed this plan, but she realized it was brilliant. Instead of fighting about her abilities, why not share them? I agree, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I will teach anyone who wants to learn. Human healing methods should not be kept secret. Baby Minho chirped his agreement from her shoulder. Around the village, people began to nod and voice their support. Even the soldiers lowered their weapons slightly, but Kento was shaking his head. Impossible. Humans are too primitive to understand the consequences of spreading their biological advantages. The risk to galactic stability is too great. Then you leave us no choice, Taman said. The dragon's body began to glow with the same golden light that had appeared when his son was healed. But this light was brighter and more intense. The other dragons in the sky began to glow as well. The ancient dragon laws are clear, Taman announced. When the innocent are threatened by those who fear what they do not understand, dragons must stand as guardians. Earth and its healers are now under the protection of the Dragon Alliance. The glow from the dragons grew so bright that the consortium members had to shield their eyes. Their advanced scanning equipment began to spark and smoke from the energy. This is not over, Kento said as he retreated toward his ship. The consortium will not allow biological weapons to threaten galactic peace, and dragons will not allow fear to destroy hope, Taman replied. As the consortium ships lifted off and disappeared into space, Jiwon realized that her simple act of healing one sick baby had changed everything. The galaxy was now divided between those who saw human healing as a threat and those who saw it as a miracle. The real battle was just beginning. The consortium ships returned 2 weeks later with an entire fleet. Jiwon counted over 100 alien vessels filling the sky above her village. They came in the early morning when the mist was still rising from the rice fields. Their ships were different this time, bigger and darker. These were not medical vessels. These were warships. They have brought an army, Captain Seojin said, looking through his binoculars at the alien fleet. Our satellites show more ships arriving every hour. The Korean military had been preparing for this moment. Soldiers had built defensive positions around the village. Fighter jets were ready at nearby bases. But everyone knew that human weapons would not be enough against alien technology. The real defenders were the dragons. Taman stood in his crater with his wings spread wide. Around him, 20 other adult dragons had taken positions throughout the valley. More dragons appeared in the sky every few hours, coming from distant stars to honor the ancient oath of protection. How many dragons are coming? Dr. Sunho asked Taman through the translation computer. Every dragon who has ever lost a child to scale rot, Taman replied. Every parent who watched their hatchling die while advanced medicine failed them. They come because one small human showed them that healing is possible. Baby Minho sat on Jiwon's shoulder, no longer sick but not yet old enough to fight. His father had made it clear that the little dragon would stay close to Jiwon no matter what happened. The alien fleet began to descend. Instead of landing like before, the ships hovered just above the ground. Hundreds of consortium soldiers emerged, wearing white armor that glowed with energy shields. They carried weapons that hummed with power. Healer Prime Kento appeared again, but this time he was accompanied by other alien leaders. Jiwon could see beings from different species. Tall creatures with blue skin and 4 arms, short beings covered in silver fur, others that looked like walking crystals. Citizens of Earth, Kento's voice echoed in everyone's minds. We represent the combined medical authorities of 47 civilizations. We have come to remove the biological threat before it can spread to other worlds. We are not a threat, Jiwon called out. We are healers. Your ignorance of your own danger makes you even more dangerous, replied one of the blue-skinned aliens. You do not understand that your healing methods violate the natural order of disease and death. The natural order? Taman roared from his crater. Is it natural for children to die when they could be saved? The crystal being spoke with a voice like breaking glass. Dragon, you have been infected by human emotional manipulation. Their healing methods create dependency and weakness. Species that rely on human healing will lose their own medical knowledge. Then teach us your knowledge too, Jiwon said, stepping forward despite Captain Seojin trying to hold her back. Let us learn from each other. Let human healers work with alien doctors. Together we can save more lives than either of us could alone. The alien leaders looked at each other with what seemed like confusion. This was clearly not the response they had expected. Impossible, Kento said finally. Humans are too primitive to understand advanced medical science. You would corrupt our methods with your emotional thinking. And you would corrupt our methods with your cold thinking, Taman replied. Perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs. More dragons were arriving. The sky was filling with massive wings and powerful bodies. Some dragons were so old that their scales had turned silver with age. Others were young adults whose scales gleamed like jewels. All of them had positioned themselves between the alien fleet and the village. You cannot protect them forever, said the fur-covered alien. We have the authority of the Galactic Council. Every civilized world will support us, will they? Asked a new voice. Everyone turned to see more ships approaching. But these ships were different from the consortium vessels. They came in many shapes and sizes, clearly from different worlds and species. The first ship to land was small and green. From it emerged beings that looked like large insects with intelligent eyes. Their leader approached the gathering and spoke in a clicking voice that the translator struggled to understand. We are the hive mind of Centauri Prime. The translation finally came through. We have heard that humans can heal the dying sickness that has plagued our larvae for generations. We come to request help, not to make war. Another ship landed. This one was shaped like a flower and seemed to be grown rather than built. Plant-like beings emerged, their leaves rustling with what sounded like whispered conversations. The Grove Collective of New Eden greets the human healers, their speaker said. Our root rot disease has killed thousands of our young saplings. We ask for your teaching, not your imprisonment. More ships kept arriving. Each one brought representatives from worlds that had heard about what happened on Earth, species that had their own incurable diseases, parents who had watched their children die despite all the advanced medicine in the galaxy. Within an hour, there were 2 separate fleets in the sky above the village. The consortium warships on one side, and the desperate parents from dozens of worlds on the other side. This changes nothing, Kento said, but his voice sounded less certain than before. These species do not understand the danger they are requesting. We understand perfectly, said a being that looked like it was made of living light. We understand that our children are dying, and humans offer hope where your consortium offers only rules. Jiwan looked around at all the alien beings who had come seeking help. Some looked like creatures from human nightmares. Others were beautiful beyond description. But in all their faces, whether they had faces at all, she could see the same thing she'd seen in Taman's eyes when he first arrived. They were parents who loved their children. I will help anyone who asks, Jiwan announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. Human healing belongs to everyone who needs it, not just humans. She walked toward the center of the gathering with baby Minho still on her shoulder. As she moved, something unexpected happened. The alien parents began to move forward too, leaving their ships to walk closer to her. The consortium soldiers raised their weapons, but they found themselves facing not just dragons now, but desperate parents from dozens of worlds. The moral situation had become impossible for them. Were they really going to attack grieving families who only wanted to save their children? Stand down, Kento ordered his soldiers. Then he looked directly at Jiwan. Human healer, you do not know what you are starting. If your methods spread across the galaxy, everything will change. Good, Jiwan replied simply. Change is what happens when people choose love over fear. Behind her, Taman began to glow with that warm golden light. One by one, the other dragons began to glow as well. Then something amazing happened. Some of the alien parents began to glow too, each in their own way. The insect beings buzzed with harmonious music. The plant creatures bloomed with flowers that had never been seen before. The light being became brighter and more beautiful. In that moment, the galaxy split into 2 sides, those who chose fear of change and those who chose hope for their children. The war for the future of healing was about to begin. 1 year later, the small village in Korea had become the center of the galaxy. Jiwan looked out the window of her new clinic and smiled. In the rice fields where Taman had first crashed, there was now a beautiful garden where beings from hundreds of worlds grew healing plants together. The insect people from Centauri Prime tended flowers that glowed with soft blue light. The plant beings from New Eden had grown trees that produced fruits with incredible healing power. Human farmers worked alongside creatures that looked like living rocks, all of them sharing knowledge about growing medicine. The war that everyone feared had never happened. Instead of fighting, something much more powerful had occurred. When the desperate alien parents saw that Jiwon was willing to help anyone who asked, they had refused to leave. For 3 days, they had camped in the rice fields while the consortium ships hovered overhead, demanding that everyone go home. But on the 4th day, something changed everything. A small ship had arrived carrying a being that everyone recognized. It was Elder Minji, the oldest member of the Galactic Council. She was ancient even by galactic standards, and her wisdom was respected across 1,000 worlds. Elder Minji had walked slowly through the crowd of alien parents and dragons until she reached Jiwon's clinic. There she had asked to see the human healer who had caused such trouble in the galaxy. "I have come," Elder Minji had said in her creaky old voice, "because I have heard impossible stories. Stories about a young human who can cure diseases that have killed billions. I do not believe these stories, but I am old and my belief matters less than truth." Jiwon had invited the ancient being into her clinic, where baby Minho was playing with some human children. The elder had looked at the healthy young dragon and asked to hear the full story of his healing. When Jiwon finished explaining what she had done, Elder Minji had been quiet for a long time. Finally, she had asked the question that changed everything. "Child, will you show me how to heal the way humans heal?" That was how the great teaching began. Now, a year later, healers from across the galaxy came to Earth not as conquerors or prisoners, but as students. They lived in the village, learned from Jiwon and the other human doctors, and discovered that healing was about more than just medicine. Dr. Sunho had built a beautiful school where alien healers learned to make honey baths and herb mixtures. But more importantly, they learned to listen to their patients, with their hearts instead of just their machines. The insect healers from Zentari discovered that their natural ability to feel the emotions of their hive could help them understand what individual patients needed. They stopped treating symptoms and started treating whole beings. The crystal healers learned that their pure logical thinking became more powerful when they added human compassion to their methods. They found that patients healed faster when they felt cared for as well as medically treated. The plant healers discovered that their connection to growing things could help them understand how diseases grew too. By combining their natural knowledge with human intuition, they created treatments that helped both the body and the spirit. Even some members of the consortium had quietly come to learn. They removed their white robes and worked in the gardens alongside everyone else, discovering that healing was not about showing superior knowledge but about serving those in need. Healer Prime Kento had never officially joined the school, but Jiwon had seen him walking through the village late at night, watching the students work together. She suspected he was learning even without admitting it. The biggest change had happened to the dragons themselves. Taemin had become Earth's first alien ambassador, but more importantly, he had become a teacher. Dragons from across the galaxy brought their sick hatchlings to Earth, and Taemin taught them how human-style healing worked for dragon bodies. The scale rot that had once meant certain death was now completely curable. But the dragons had learned to use human healing methods for many other conditions too. Dragon medicine, which had always been based on ancient power and magic, became gentler and more caring when mixed with human compassion. Young Minho had grown into a beautiful adolescent dragon, his scales now permanently bright gold from his recovery. He spent his days flying between the different healing centers, translating between species and helping scared patients feel safe. "He is becoming a healer himself," Taemin told Jiwon one evening as they watched Minho gently calm a frightened alien child who had come for treatment. "All the young ones are," Jiwon replied. "They are growing up believing that caring for others is the most important thing anyone can do." The change was spreading beyond Earth too. On dozens of worlds, healing centers were being built using the combined knowledge of human medicine and alien science. Diseases that had plagued civilizations for thousands of years were being cured by healers who had learned to treat patients with both advanced technology and simple love. The Galactic Medical Consortium still existed, but it was no longer the same organization. Under pressure from the new alliance of healing worlds, they had changed their mission from controlling medical knowledge to sharing it freely. Elder Minji had become the head of a new organization called the Universal Healing Alliance. Her first law was simple: all knowledge that can save lives belongs to everyone who needs it. As Jiwon walked through her village that evening, she marveled at how much had changed. Children from Earth played games with young aliens who looked like flowers, insects, and living stars. Human grandmothers taught ancient healing songs to beings who had traveled from the other side of the galaxy to learn them. In the main square, a statue had been built showing a small human woman holding a tiny dragon. At the base of the statue were words written in hundreds of different languages, all saying the same thing. Healing begins with love, but the most amazing change was something that could not be seen with eyes or measured with machines. The galaxy had remembered how to hope. When parents across 1,000 worlds looked at their sick children now, they no longer thought, there is nothing more we can do. Instead, they thought, someone somewhere will know how to help us. That night, as Jiwan prepared to close her clinic, a new ship appeared in the sky. It was small and battered, clearly from a world that did not have much technology. As it landed in the rice fields, Jiwan could see that its pilot was alone. The being that emerged was unlike anything she had seen before. It looked like it was made of music itself, shifting and flowing like a song given form. In its arms it carried something small and dim, a young version of itself that was barely glowing. The being approached Jiwan's clinic and spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "I have traveled very far," it said. "I heard whispers across space about a human healer who saved a dragon child. My little one is dying and I have nowhere else to turn. Will you help us?" Jiwan looked at the desperate parent and the sick child, and she felt the same certainty she had felt when Taemin first arrived. This was why she had become a healer. This was why all the changes and challenges had been worth it. "Of course I will help," she said, opening the door to her clinic wide. That is what healers do. As the music being carried its child inside, Jiwan could see Taemin watching from his favorite resting spot near the school. The ancient dragon nodded approval, his scales glowing softly with contentment. 1 year ago, a desperate father had brought his dying son to a small village on Earth, hoping that primitive humans might succeed where advanced civilizations had failed. Now that small village had become a beacon of hope for the entire galaxy, proving that the most powerful force in the universe was not technology or magic. It was love that refused to give up. And in a clinic that had once treated only farm animals and injured birds, a human healer prepared to save another child from another world, knowing that each life saved made the galaxy a little brighter for everyone.